Protesters had been barred from marching towards the Philippines' presidential palace, but that didn't stop a melee from erupting a short distance from its gates. As protesters threw rocks and Molotov cocktails, police responded with flashbangs and water cannon. Around 17 people were arrested and dozens of officers injured. The day began peacefully with around 33,000 people marching against a growing corruption scandal. In recent years, the Philippines has spent nearly $15 billion on anti-flooding infrastructure. Yet many poverty-stricken parts of the country continue to be ravaged by deadly storms.
The people are very angry because they have been victims of flooding. The billions of pesos that were supposed to help them, that was supposed to solve the problem, have ended up lining the pockets of all these corrupt politicians, government officials, and contractors.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. later established an independent commission to investigate. His public works secretary has since resigned, and more than a dozen legislators and officials have been accused of forcing companies to pay kickbacks to secure lucrative projects.
I feel bad that we wallow in poverty, losing our homes, our lives and our future, while they rake in a big fortune from our taxes that pay for luxury cars, foreign trips and bigger corporate transactions.
As the political storm intensifies, the Philippines' monsoon season rages on. Super Typhoon Ragasa saw work and classes suspended across large parts of the country, packing wind gusts of nearly 300 kilometres an hour. The conditions also raise the risk of storm surges exceeding 3 metres, bringing more potential danger to regions promised protection. Manny Tsigas, ABC News.
For more on this, let's bring in Richard Heydarian, a political analyst based in Manila. Thank you for joining us, Richard. Now, I've seen on your Instagram that you were at the march where thousands gathered to protest. Now, tell us, what are the demonstrations against?
Well, as far as the Philippine democracy is concerned, I think what we're having is akin to a multiple organ failure, right? So corruption is extremely endemic at every level of government, from massive vote buying during elections to district engineers approving questionable contracts to people in different branches of the state in one way or another getting involved in dodgy practices. So because it's a very endemic problem, many people are wondering what should be the response. Now, of course, let's not forget, the name of the current president is Ferdinand Marcos. He's a namesake son of the former Filipino dictator who is notorious for the ill-gotten wealth. Nevertheless, the current president opened the Pandora's box earlier this year during his State of the Nation address, where he admitted that there's massive corruption in the country. And especially with floods coming in because of all of these typhoons right now, it has made it very clear that these flood control projects, these infrastructure projects, were shoddy. So what happened the other day was that there were multiple rallies. The one that I was able to attend the most was a massive one, very peaceful one. This is in EDSA, where the 1986 revolution against the former President Marcos Sr. happened. But there were also other ones. There was one in Mendiola, closer to the Malacanang Palace, where things got a little bit ugly and a little bit violent. And there are concerns about whether there were seditious and insidious groups who are trying to weaponize this anti-corruption movement to push for their own policy or political agenda.
Now, can you explain the so-called ghost infrastructure payment scandal and what impacts it's had on Philippines politics? Now, it's already claimed the scalp of at least one politician in Marcos Jr.'s cousin.
Right. I mean, more than a decade ago, older millennials such as myself, we were radicalized by another corruption scandal. This was the pork barrel scandal, PDAF scandal in 2013. We were talking about 10 billion pesos back then. Now we're talking about potentially $10 billion in funds going to shoddy flood control projects, which were approved by district engineers. Allegedly, senators, congressmen were in cahoots with that, and very, very questionable contractors were given these projects, but apparently they didn't do anything. They would just put on some concrete and a few pipes there and pretend that that was a flood control project, except you cannot pretend it when you have massive flooding almost every other month in this country, across the country. So it really came to the fore, and the president, who's entering his twilight years in office and named Ferdinand Marcos, felt the pressure to admit that there's a problem, but he has opened a Pandora's box because it's not very clear what he wants to happen here. As you correctly pointed out, one of the casualties was someone very close to him, the Speaker of the House. Next thing you know, actually a public works secretary was also, had to resign. But people want blood. I mean, people want heads to roll. And there are people who are calling for the president himself to resign or also face scrutiny, including by a newly created independent commission on infrastructure, which has the mandate to investigate all sorts of shoddy infrastructure projects in the country.
Now, it's very clear in your response that public anger is high. You mentioned places where the protests took place, but what do we know about reports of violence? Because you said it's been peaceful, but we've also heard the reports of violence.
Oh, absolutely. So this is the one I was saying, which was on the other side of the town. This was in Mendiola area, close to the Malacanang Palace. Our suspicion is that there were really politically motivated groups because there were people in masks and hoods, people we don't know which organization they were coming from, because all of the established opposition organization, including far left, center left, liberal, they were all there with their flags on the other side of the town, which I was able to witness myself. But the ones on the other side of the town, a lot of them were really shady characters. And it looks like some would say there were even paid goons there who were there to really provoke. So you had really agent provocateurs there. But we have to look at the investigation. I hope there'll be a proper investigation because reported there was one fatality, there were some wounded people, some violence happened. So I hope there'll be an independent investigation to look into this matter. Why this is important? Because in neighboring Indonesia, the trigger for the latest violent protest was when a Grab bike driver, was a casualty during a violent police crackdown. So the pressure also is on the police forces to make sure that they check their ranks and no abuses happen here.
Now, President Ferdinand has said that he doesn't blame demonstrators. What do you think he meant by this?
Well, President Marcos Jr. is in his, how should I put it, in this kind of a retrospective, almost sentimental mode nowadays. He's saying he's feeling bad for all the people who are suffering from poverty, although, of course, people will wonder, didn't he do the same when his father was ransacking the country during the dictatorship era? Well, he's saying that he saw it with his own eyes when he visited different communities, seeing the poverty, seeing the fake, shoddy infrastructure projects. But, honestly, we're all scratching our head and wondering, what is the game plan here? I mean, how far this is going to go? Because the other scenario I'm more worried about is the Brazil scenario, when the Operation Car Wash investigations a decade ago led to the collapse of the entire political establishment. Former President Lula was imprisoned back then. Dilma Rousseff was impeached. The Speaker of the House was impeached. And it was precisely in that environment that Jair Bolsonaro and the more fringe elements were able to capture power. So my fear here is not that Duterte per se will come and take advantage of the situation, because the Vice President, Sara Duterte herself, is facing accusations of corruption. My worry is that even more insidious forces, including those who want revolutionary government or are interested in coup attempts, they will take advantage of this. So you're absolutely right. There's a lot of anger. The president senses that anger. But I'm not sure there's a strategy here whereby there could be a rule of law-based way to placate people and at the same time make sure there's no political chaos.
Now, the protests were held on a significant date, marking the anniversary of the president's father's martial law from 1972. Do you know if there's any more protests planned?
Absolutely. There are going to be more protests, I think, I expect every week or so. Ahead of this latest protest, there was a lot of behind-the-scenes negotiation by organizers to make sure agents saboteurs would not take advantage of it, that it won't be hijacked by politically motivated people. But as you correctly pointed out, that marking the martial law, marking the former dictators milestone, that made some people think that this will be an anti-Marcos event. But the organizer made it very clear, this is not about anti-anyone, this is about fighting for a democratic Philippines which is more corruption-free. So you had tremendous amount of, I would say, self-restraint by liberal opposition forces, precisely because they're worried that if Marcos goes down, Duterte's will come back, and they see that, if this is Dante Alighieri's 7 circles of hell, they fear going from Purgatorio to the 7th circle. That's why you have this very bizarre situation whereby liberal progressives who are very anti-Marcos are now even more worried about the return of Duterte's.
And now, Richard Heydarian, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.